The Pittsburgh Penguins are currently right in the hunt for the 4th spot in the East Division. Right now, they have a 2-point lead over the Philadelphia Flyers, that in which they defeated the other night off of a late goal scored by none other than the topic of this video, Jared McCann. Now, even though we may see some sort of an injury scare once again with the 24-year-old forward, he's a guy whose name has made it over onto a piece on The Athletic that I wanted to talk about here in today's video. So, our piece is written by Josh Yohei here on The Athletic. I will leave a link in the description to this one. Which Penguins are staying and going? The 2021 trade deadline most likely to leave list. Now again, because The Athletic is paid for material, we're not going over onto this article and taking snippets from this one. We're going over onto NHLTradeTalk.com because they summarize some of the ideas that Josh Yohei presents in this Athletic piece and writes about it in a platform that is free for consumption without a paywall. So we're going over onto NHLTradeTalk.com, so 2 articles in the description, The Athletic if you have it, and the regular article we're reading from over here. And we're talking about Jared McCann because Josh Yohei contends that McCann, who is a 24-year-old guy who is a pretty young player from the 2014 draft, who is making $2.9 million a season until 2022, he kind of looks lost out there, and that the Penguins don't exactly know what he is. As one kind of player in his first year with the Penguins last season, this year, he hasn't been helping the Penguins win for a while, and he makes almost $3 million annually. Yohei suggests that he be traded over to the Detroit Red Wings or the Ottawa Senators, where he can get a ton of ice time. There are also a whole bunch of other suggestions made by Yohei with guys like Marcus Pettersson, Colton Seaver, and a few other players too, so you can go ahead, check the articles, and read about that. But I wanted to talk about Jared McCann here because he's a guy whom I'm a lot more familiar with in comparison to the other Penguins, and hey, that's not surprising to see why Jared McCann was drafted by Vancouver. So I was always a guy who sat here, watched the prospects, watched them develop, and then saw how they translated into the NHL, and Jared McCann is a guy who was a really capable two-way center back when he was in the OHL. I remember at one of the Vancouver Canucks events that they held with the fans at Rogers Arena, Jared McCann said that he models his game after Ryan Kesler. To which Canucks fans booed because Ryan Kesler at that point in time was the guy whom the Canucks actually traded to get the draft pick for Jared McCann, and the way that he left was sour in the eyes of many fans. But today, we love Ryan Kesler, so let's just continue on with that little story. Jared McCann played his first season in the NHL with the Vancouver Canucks in 2015-2016. Back then, he was known as a guy who actually had a pretty good snipe. He had 9 goals, 69 games played, 18 points on the year. Wasn't really super amazing, but hey, he was a 19-year-old guy making his debut. He was just kind of there, you know. When he did score goals, they were very nice snipes, and overall, the Vancouver Canucks didn't really give him an opportunity to showcase that Ryan Kesler-like game style that he had established for himself back at that press conference, or not even press conference, it was just kind of like a meeting with the season ticket holders, I believe. But the season after that, Jared McCann was no longer suiting up for the Vancouver Canucks because he was traded in a deal for Erik Goodbranson. And a lot of Penguins fans know about Erik Goodbranson. Yeah, we know they played on the same team for a little bit afterwards. But Erik Goodbranson was acquired by the Canucks in exchange for McCann, and that was kind of the last Canucks fans saw out of him. Fast forward to today. Jared McCann in 17 games played has 10 points for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Last season he had 35 points in 66 games, but what I really wanted to focus on was the overall underlying data behind Jared McCann and the way he plays, because right now, if you take a look at the Pittsburgh Penguins and you sort by Corsi for percentage, Jared McCann is literally first out of every single player who has suited up for the Penguins this season. 17 games played, he's got a 57.4% Corsi for percentage, meaning that every time he is on the ice, the Pittsburgh Penguins are getting a lot more shot attempts for and a lot fewer shot attempts against. The expected goals for percentage is also lying in Jared McCann's favor too, because he has a 57.64% expected goals for percentage. That is first on the team. Second is Sidney Crosby with 56.05. Goals for per 60, hey, Jared McCann's first in that category as well. He's up here with 5.35, higher than all the other players on the team, including Evgeny Malkin, Sidney Crosby, Jake Gensel, etc. And goals against per 60, hey, he's actually out here with some some good underlying data as well. There are only 2 players who have suited up for the Penguins this season who have a better goals against per 60 rate. They are Sidney Crosby and Zach Aston Reese. So just from the underlying data over here, it looks like the overall two-way ability and impact that Jared McCann said he wanted for himself back when he was saying, yeah, I compare my game to Ryan Kessler, looks like they're starting to become a little bit bigger of a hint in that. And I'm not saying that Jared McCann is being a shutdown, two-way guy who plays the PK and he's your number 1 penalty kill specialist. I'm not saying that in specifics, because obviously Corsi and all that, it doesn't take into account some of those extenuating circumstances. It's just from a pure statistical analysis point of view, Jared McCann is one of the most positive players on the Penguins in terms of generating offense and controlling opposition offense. And the production he has, hey, it's not terrible. 10 points, 17 games. It's probably among the top of his point per game categories that he's had in the NHL thus far. And he's only 24 years old, so he's a guy who definitely does have the capacity to improve. It's just a matter of how long that takes him and how far he can go. So, for Josh Yohei to come over here onto The Athletic and suggest an idea of trading him away to Detroit or Ottawa to give him some more ice time, I think if this is a guy that is made available for any of these teams in any capacity, you jump over it. Call up Ron Hextall, ask him, hey, you've got this guy, McCann. We've heard you guys are interested in maybe working out a deal because maybe he's not working out for you guys all too well. What exactly is the price here? Because this is the kind of guy whom, if you're a rebuilding franchise, he could probably help speed up your rebuild in some capacity, because he's young enough that he can still come in here and contribute long-term with your Dylan Larkins or your Philip Zadinas or your Tim Stutzlas or your Brady Kachucks, but he's also old enough to the point that if you give this guy the keys to the car, you say, hey, this is your team now, you're one of the top forwards on this team, go out there and do something, he probably can. And it's not like he's all too much older either, because, let's face it, he was drafted the same year as Dylan Larkin. You think Dylan Larkin still has room to improve and become better and take this team into the promised land in the next few years, then hey, Jared McCann is right in that age group. So depending on the price, I would not be surprised if either Pierre Dorion and the Ottawa Senators or Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings were jumping all over this, especially if he is actually made available, like Josh Yohei suggests the Penguins should do. Again, we're not making it seem like this is going to happen. It's just a possibility, an idea brought up here on one article that suggests what should be happening here. But for Jared McCann, I honestly do think that there is a value in this kind of player. It's just, with Vancouver, there were always some issues going on, I think, with personalities or whatever. That's kind of what the word on the street usually says. It's never really something that was established in writing or whatever. It was all just kind of hearsay with Vancouver and why the Canucks got rid of him for Eric Goodbranson. If you want a very small piece of tidbit history here on the channel, my old video talking about the trade when it happened actually is still up, and I think I opened it talking about how I was running around in the living room or something when the trade was announced, because I was like super high on the prospects, Virtanen, McCann, the guys at that 2014 draft. Jared McCann, by the way, taken one spot before David Pastrnak, so yeah, you can definitely understand my frustration when looking upon that 2014 NHL entry draft today. But for Jared McCann, it definitely is not something to ignore. The fact that this guy has been improving, he has been a good NHL player, he's doing really good things for the Penguins, statistically speaking, although eye test speaking, actually watching the games, things could be a little bit different, but the raw analytics of it, the Corsi for percentage, the expected goals for and against percentage, hey, he's doing really well, according to the numbers here. But obviously, you know, analytics don't tell the entire story, but they are one part of what is a story of a hockey player. So talk to me in the comments if you're a Sens fan or a Red Wings fan. Would you want to go after this kind of guy if he is made available? And what would be the most that you would be willing to give up? Because I'm kind of thinking, for this kind of a guy, I would probably expect a first-round pick at the very least. Maybe add another prospect in there, maybe add a third or whatever to balance out the scales, because this certainly is a seemingly valuable NHL player. So talk to me in the comments what you think about this stuff. You know, it's definitely interesting to stir the mind about conversations like these. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And also, Penguins fans, I completely ignored you guys. Talk to me in the comments if you're trading Jared McCann, what would you realistically expect to get out of it? And furthermore, is it even really worth it exploring a trade with this kind of player? I already said all the formalities, so I'll just leave you with that. And bye.